Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all can listen to my voice. And without taking much ado, we would like to start for the session. And we are pleased to have Ms. Manjari Gokhale Joshi. And she is a prominent name in training industry as well as corporate and BPO industry. And to start with, I would like to give a brief introduction, and that's what you will understand that why for success, this topic we have this lady with us. So the first thing that is, she is a recipient of the, I would just like to give you some notable points that I have taken out from her long details of achievements. So the first that comes is, as whenever we talk about education, we think about Oxford, Harvard. So she has done her master's in mega project management from SAID Business School, that is from Oxford University, and that's a great privilege, I think, for a student to have. Then second comes, she is also recipient of British High Commission Chevening Scholarship. It was in 2006. So from that point, the story continues. She has co-founded the Maya Care Community Interest Company, CIC, for providing services to senior citizens across the UK, which is a recent venture of hers. Before this, in March 2020, she was CEO of GTT, Global Talent Track, which is a prominent name if you consider CSR and the corporate training fraternity. It's a prominent name, and she had been leading it from the front for a long time. Then she had also contributed to one of the top companies of India's IT sector, that is NSAR BPO, where we all know the great name Ganesh Natarajan. So she had worked closely with him, and she had led that BPO from a headcount of 75 to 1,000 in the capacity of HR head and head contact center. Last but not the least, she is the author of 5 award-winning books, out of which the one, Bosses of the Wild, is in the 5th print run. That's really great. So now, without taking much time, I would like to give it all to Manjari. First, Manjari, we can have a brief about what, without taking questions, your introductory statement on the topic, and then we go ahead with the questions. Is it fine?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mukesh, for a very kind introduction. And it's a real pleasure to have so many of you. I can see most people. It's very, very nice that all of you have taken the trouble to come and sit here on an afternoon in India. Some people in the UK who've joined in at 10:30 in the morning. And just a few things I would like to say, because I know I'm actually very, very keen to hear your questions. And I guess Mukesh has lined up some questions, and there are more coming in. The topic we decided for today is success, what's that? And why did we say success, what's that? Because there are a lot of differing definitions of what is success. Success does mean different things to different people. And I'm just going to define what success means to me in a single sentence. And of course, we'll take it on from there. And I would like it if really people want to object and say that, no, I don't agree with you, and why I don't agree with you. So it'll be a great discussion. But success to me in a single sentence means, can you overcome failure when it comes? When we say failure, failure could be your own failure to achieve something which you wanted to achieve. It could be failure of, some people fail you. A lot of times you trust people and people don't live up to what you thought they would want to do. This includes maybe your parents, your people at work, people outside, or the world in general, like we are in the COVID situation today. In a way, the circumstances we thought, none of us actually thought we would be where we are today. Because something around us changed and something which we thought is going to happen didn't happen. So success to me is the ability to overcome whatever comes your way. And I'm just going to leave it at that because there is more on this. And over to you, Mukesh.
Thanks a lot, Manjari. I think you gave a beautiful introduction, and that's what is not the run-of-the-mill definition that we get. So I think it's really good. So first question I would take, and as I think it was a very innovative suggestion from Manjari, that we also take the names of the people so that they are aware and they can counter the views. That is the prime, I think, objective of these type of discussions. The first question comes here always: what is success? Is it pay or high knowledge, or a high pay, or we call it package these days, or something else? What is success? Is it monetary, or it is knowledge driven, or it is something else? This question comes from 4 people: Niharika, Yatanshu, Shresh, and Lavina.
Yes, okay. So I can see a lot of students here today. There are some parents, I think there are some teachers also college teachers, but there are some parents and there are mostly students. So I'm going to answer this from the perspective of starting at the lowest level, at the students, and at the highest level, where the parents themselves and the teachers themselves have accomplished a lot of things in their lives. So let's go back to one of my favorite management models, and that's Maslow's pyramid. If any of you have, I'm sure a lot of you are aware, the Maslow's pyramid, what does it say? That it's a pyramid where at the very bottom, what you have is sustenance. You have safety, security, food, and I think we are very, very fortunate, all of us on the call here, to know that that part of our lives is taken care of. We are not struggling for food and safety, and we are very, very fortunate to be in that position. But from the student perspective, when you're starting off in your career or you're going to decide what career to take, a lot of times people will tell you follow your dreams, and if your dream is to be a musician, to be a sports person, to do whatever, you must do it, and you must do it. Ultimately, you must do it. But when can you do it? When the bottom line, when the at the very bottom, if you think you are going to earn X amount of money pursuing this career and you are fine with it, you're going to be able to adjust your lifestyle to say, I'm okay if one day I don't have money, one day I do, but I'm okay with this because I'm in a position today to say I can live with this much money. Unfortunately, what happens is that people say that I do want my dream, and my dream is to be XYZ superstar, whatever else, but I'm not okay with the fact that the success will not come to me overnight, and I'm not willing to wait for those 20 years for that to happen. So that's the that's at the bottom. So let's start with uh, that is sustenance, safety, security. The next comes self-esteem. Okay, so I've skipped a few levels because all of it is coming together: security, jobs, having a job, keeping a job. Next is self-esteem, and I would like to spend a few seconds talking about this because where social media has taken us today, uh, I think 9 out of 10 people are living in the pyramid of self-esteem, because before actually something happens, it needs to go on social media. Before it actually has taken place, before you've actually achieved something, you've clicked the picture, you've got a video, you've got a selfie with someone, and it's up there. And is that what we are living for? And that is something which you need to think of in your career. Are you in the area of self-esteem? Do you mean that success is earning X salary because somebody else should be impressed by you? Does it mean you need to have a certain designation? You need to have all the perks of, having a cabin, having a PA, and having, something fancy written on your social media profile? Are you doing it for someone else? And that's something which everybody needs to ask, whether it's a student level or elsewhere. And that is where the problem is, because the minute you start living for someone else, you stop living your own dream and you're trying to live someone else's dream. So that's the next. And the topmost is, and where, and that's why even Maslow put it at the very top, is self-actualization. Why are you doing something? Are you doing it because it gives you satisfaction, joy, happiness, whatever else? And that is where the place you need to be. But that place doesn't have to be at the end of your career after 20 years or 30 years. It can be now as you're a student. Can I do something which gives me satisfaction and gives me the sense of achievement that somebody asked me to do something and I did it? I was able to do it. Okay, so I'm going to end this question here because I know there will be more to come. Yeah. So essentially, in a sentence, success to different people will mean different things at different stages of their career, of their life, and it's absolutely fine, but you need to be real. That's all.
Thanks, Manjari. So it means that it is relative and it's self-driven.
Yes, absolutely.
Now here, I think there was one question, sub-question of this was from Lavina, that it has a different meaning for different people. But one key point she wants to understand is, why is success so important? That's, I think, very critical question. Why is success so important for people?
Right. I'm going to go into a little diversion of success. Okay, I said in the beginning that it's overcoming failure, but it's also about understanding what you really want. And I think as a society, whether it's in the UK, the US, India, wherever, I think we put a lot of pressure on children to expect them to know exactly what they want. Until they are able to articulate and define, okay, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a data scientist, I want to be this, we're just not satisfied because we keep asking them, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What is it that you want? And that's very, very difficult because a lot of times you see people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or even 60s don't know what they want. Okay, so why is it important? And it's fine to not know because things can change. And I think the other thing that really puts this pressure is MBA programs, When they say, where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, have you achieved the pinnacle of what they have defined as success? Unfortunately, even when you pass out of college, the only way people have defined success is that what is your package? And I'm going to digress a little bit into a fantastic story because, and you mentioned in the beginning, I was very, very fortunate to be part of the Oxford University Side Business School program, where I was studying for 2 years. And one day, in one of those days, we were very fortunate. About 7 of us could have breakfast with Peter Tufano, who's the head of Side Business School. And even more interesting is the fact that Peter Tufano is today the head of Side Business School, but prior to that, he was head of Harvard Business School. And around us were few MBA students, and our course was called the MSc in Mega Project Management. And most of us were experienced professionals, having spent a few years in the industry, going to study. And there were a lot of MBA students, and one MBA student asked Peter Tufano, and he said, my app is not working. And we sighed, and he said, is that what you asked Peter Tufano? That my app is not working? Another MBA asked him, that what is the number of questions I should ask in a class? Is 60-40 okay? Is 70-30 okay? That's not what you ask, because this is about self-esteem. Why are you asking a question? Because you're expecting others to be impressed with your question? So anyway, step back, and I said, I definitely have a question for Peter Tufano, because it's amazing that I get to meet somebody who's been at Harvard and Oxford both. So I asked him, I said, what is the biggest difference you find among students or among the experience itself of being at Harvard Business School and Oxford today? And his answer was very interesting. And this was way back in 2014. And he said, at Harvard Business School, when students pass out, we are always at the top. We are always at the top of the pyramid. Why? Because success criteria is the package they pass out with. What is the money they're earning, in which usually they're in banking, finance, investment banking, whatever. So what is it they're earning? While in Oxford, I'm surrounded by people like you who are out to change the world, and they actually don't care about the money. So that is a difference. I'm not saying one is right, one is wrong. That is just the way it is. Why is success important? Again, I'm going to translate it for students in a very different way. It's when can you overcome failure? When you look around you and say, have I used all of my resources? When I say resources, am I using the best of the technology around me? Am I using the best of the knowledge around me? If you're surrounded by people, your parents, your teachers, maybe other friends, people who know more about a subject, am I getting the most out of them? Am I making the best use of the resources, the libraries I have? Just when I say libraries, e-libraries, am I making the best of what's available on social media today, videos, audio, whatever else? And more than anything else, am I making the best use of my time? So success will happen when you say, okay, I mean, I'm not getting into religion or God, because you may or may not believe in it, but I'm just looking at circumstance. Let's just call it circumstance. Am I making the best use of what I have? Or am I making excuses, saying, I don't have time, I'm too bored, I'm too, this didn't happen, and, this didn't work for me. So I guess that's your answer, Lavina. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's great, I think. So we should define our success. I think that's what we derive from this one. Okay, let's go to the next one. I think this is interesting. How to be a successful person without affecting others' success? Because with this generation, I think this is the challenge that I feel that most of my sessions that I take. So that they are very competitive. So how to be a successful person without affecting others' success?
Yes. Mukesh, who was that question from? Because I'm very impressed with this question.
Yeah, Cherry Patni. Cherry, she's doing MBA.
Yeah. Because I think among the questions you gave me, I think this was, I'm really amazed that somebody's thinking like this. Yes, really, really must congratulate you for this, because very few people in work life even think like that. And my straight answer to that is that, yes, your success is your success. You do not need to tread on anyone else's toes to be successful. And that is unchangeable. Whatever else changes in the world, honesty, integrity does not go out of fashion. And this is all the more today in the COVID world, when we are all working remotely. And when I look at who can I delegate a task to, and when we were looking at going online a few weeks ago, 2 months ago, we're thinking that who is going to really work from home, and who's going to say, I tried to work from home, but this didn't work for me, and the internet went off and something else happened. So success, coming back, it's your own. There is always room at the top, always. Okay, it's not a race where there is only one slot and one career and one job. Fine. And the main thing is that the education system we are in, it teaches us to compete, and I think it's a very good thing. Because just about 2-3 months ago, I was invited as a chief guest in one of the schools, and I was in Pune at that time, at one of the schools, and very proudly they told me, we don't have competition in our school. We make sure that every child wins a prize. I said, why are you doing that? Because every child need not win a prize. I mean, a child of 8 years and 10 years needs to know that somebody else is going to win sometime, and it's fine. What are we headed towards? We have learned more from failure. All of us have learned more from failure than from success. So where is the question of telling students or teaching students that there is never going to be any failure? So don't worry, there's no competition. Of course, there's competition. At the end of the day, there is going to be competition. So coming back to this wonderful question we've got, one is that there is always room at the top. Second is the fact that even if there is competition, you do your best and step out. Do everything that is in your control. I spoke some time back about using resources. Use your time, your energy, your knowledge around you, whatever it is. You might have certain inherent advantages which others don't have. Use all of them. But after that, if you don't get whatever position, slot, whatever else that you were trying to achieve, it's fine. Be gracious enough to shake that person's hand and say, congratulations, you've won. Because that's what's going to teach you, because we are coming to the next thing, which is about getting on with people. Because, one of the things which we don't teach in our education system, a lot of times is stakeholder management. When I talk about stakeholders, and it was actually the subject of my dissertation at Oxford, and the reason I had picked this stakeholder management, I used it in the context of the building of the Mumbai airport. A lot of us on this call have had the opportunity to see the Mumbai airport, and it's an amazing achievement. So I had actually picked that because that is talking about overcoming. When I say overcoming the kind of interactions there are with people across 36 countries. Okay, so right from Schindler's lifts, which are and escalators which are installed, to Chinese people coming and having problems with their visas, to coming and installing them, to 15 to 20 companies within India trying to build an airport, and of course the opposition from political parties and slum dwellers and everything else. This is what is going to help us in the long run. And when I see students stepping into work life on day 1, day 2, day 3, the first problem is he's not listening to me. I'm doing this, but he's not doing his bit. She's not cooperating. And sorry, that's not okay. So to wrap up this, that's not okay. It doesn't mean that you pull that person down. You work with that person. You try to get on and move things together. I admit at the end of it, and I've got this question a lot of times, it's not coming today, but I've got this question a lot of times from people who work with me, students, saying, okay, what do I do when somebody else steals my credit? And they're continuously doing it. All the time I've done something, I've come up with a great idea and they've just stolen it. What do I do? And it's very disheartening because people are going to do it all the time. The world is not as nice as we thought it is going to be, and it's fine. There will be people like that. So the simple practical solution to that is document what you did. If you actually said something, did something in a meeting, or in the academic context, you came up with some idea, which is, for some project or whatever else, write it down, put it on email. And if it still doesn't work, at the same time, if there is somebody who said, even before you could document it, somebody did something, was devious about it, let them steal it. My point is, if you're a person who learns, you'll come up with 15 more different ideas. It doesn't have to be that much. Okay, so
yeah, I think it's really I can align that with that. So we say honesty is still the best policy, and
yes.
and also to add upon to this, we say that we can work upon continuously improving ourselves. That's what is in our control. We can't control others. Yes. So that next question comes our way is this is again a question from multiple participants. The question is, what are the mantras for success in life, and what to do for success? So how to achieve it? And Pranav Sardana is one of the participants with us, Rahul Patnaik. And Rahul Patnaik has coined a very special term also, what are habits of success? And Shruti Singh and Vanshika Arora. So 4 people, Pranav, Rahul, Shruti and Vanshika. What are mantras for success? What to do for success and habits for success?
Okay, great. So, so we've, I think, defined success in our different ways, but I'm not going to go further into what is success because you can define yours. But let's look at a student who wants to course or has decided that, for my master's or for my undergraduate, a PhD or whatever else, I'm going to do that. So once you've decided that's what you want, the first thing you need to do is write it down for yourself somewhere visible. Okay, somewhere visible, put it up on your window, put it up somewhere saying, this is what I want. Because a public declaration of anything you want puts the pressure on you. On one hand, I was saying, let's not put pressure on students. But on the other hand, I'm saying students must put pressure on themselves. Because one of the things I see time and again is that students are too kind to themselves. Say, oh, I'm too tired. It's too much and I'm too busy. I mean, you cannot be more busy than a CEO of a company. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. So first write it down. After you've written it down, what you need to do is look at all the impediments which will come your way. Look at all the reasons why you can't do it. We would call this the black swan exercise. Okay, look at why is it that something will not happen, right from COVID to somebody trying to sabotage whatever plans you have, to maybe your own inherent laziness or inability to wake up early in the morning, or not able to concentrate, or or some other conflicting project which is coming your way, or maybe you do have multiple classes or whatever else. So actually note down what are the things that are going to stop you from achieving that dream. Once that's done, against each point, you need to write down what are you going to do about it. Okay, because you have defined 24 hours of a day. In those 24 hours, you can, I'm assuming you would sleep at the most 8 hours, 9 hours at the most. And those remaining hours, whatever, just remove your points about, whatever class, this, that, college, school, whatever else is happening. In those remaining hours, you need to leverage and say, okay, what am I going to do to walk closer to my dream? Whatever that dream or achievement is going to be. So this is a very, very structured approach. And once you've done that, you need to monitor yourself. You need to be extremely strict with yourself and, actually have a daily tracker or have a weekly tracker saying, did I achieve these 3 things in the next week when I said that, the next week, the next week, the next week. And especially in this COVID kind of situation, it's going to be very, very critical that you do this yourself. At work, you might have other people who might do it for you, but right now you need to do it for yourself. So first I said is discipline. Second, I would say flexibility. Because if you look out in the market today, who are the people hiring? We're going to come to that later in the program, but this is not changed. Like I said, honesty doesn't go out of fashion, flexibility doesn't go out of fashion. The minute you say, no, I was born to be a data scientist, or I was born to be a chemical engineer, or I was born to be a biologist, microbiologist, and I will not do anything else which is outside my framework, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to take on a job and stay in the job. So the top 2 I have defined is discipline and flexibility. The third we've already spoken about is stakeholder management, the ability to get on with people and make things happen. Right?
So I think that's a good recipe for success. That should help people. Now next come to next 4th question. This is, I think, really different again. When do you feel that you got the success you were looking for? So again, it is linked to self-actualization sort of thing. But when do you get a feeling of that you got the success you are looking for?
Okay. So again, it will be different for students, but my own definition of success for myself, and this is not for students, this was for myself, and I've had this for at least the past 8-10 years, is that I feel I've achieved success when I see somebody else succeeding. So when I see that somebody who's been a student of mine, who has worked with me, or has just been a part of a counseling session or mentoring or whatever else, and when I see them achieving something, I just feel phenomenal. And that is my definition of success. So one of the things I would tell students as well, when you step into work life, even in the beginning of your career, if you're able to say with confidence that XYZ colleague of mine, or my cousin, or my younger brother or sister, or somebody, one human being in the world has actually benefited from me, I think that's a phenomenal achievement. Because your own success will come. If you're doing all the things we just discussed, of course your success is going to come. But are you as a human being able to impact at least one more human being? So that's from me.
Yeah, that's really great. And I could share one of my team members, we did a program for a college. And when the list of the successful students for campus placement was announced, one of the star trainer, he was weeping for them that they got selected. So that was, I think, getting tears of happiness from others. I think that's amazing. So this is really great. Let's come to the next one. This is, I think, a lot of management students, we always have always heard of this. So is smart work the way towards success or the hard work? It is by Ashley Gurwa.
Yeah, I think again it's a great question, and of course it's smart work, but I'm going to put it in a way which says that working hard towards knowing how to work smart. Because smart work doesn't mean just not doing certain things. It just means them doing them faster. And in fact, today is very much the time when we are in the world of AI, artificial intelligence. We are in the world of phenomenal data that is with us. If there is something a phone can do, an app can do, or something a quick bit of technology can do, just get it done, so that you make more time to do something more. And that's one of the tenets of leadership that we are talking about, because one of my subjects of writing is AI to EI. Artificial intelligence to emotional intelligence. Because artificial intelligence is today, I mean, it's so phenomenal that a WhatsApp is telling you what you think you should send. What is the message you should send? Because it's picking up things from what you've sent before. I mean, it's so scary, because if somebody else is even going to do that, what are you going to do? So let that smart work happen with that smart person or the smart gadget, but you make more time. And that applies very much for time as well. And people ask me a lot about time management and, how is it that 5 books, and how did you do this and all of that? I said, because we are always doing 2 things, at least 2 things at the same time. Now, the question is that which 2 things are you doing? Should you be writing an important email and driving at the same time? Of course not. Right? Should you be, doing something which is a low end activity? When I say low end activity, maybe you're just on a bus, or you're on a train, or you're just walking, or you're just running, or something like that. Can you listen to a podcast which is quite interesting and informative and educated? Of course you should. I mean, I remember, because I used to live in the UK even at that time when I was doing my Oxford courses, and I used to cook while I used to put on my Oxford lectures. I used to actually Google them, YouTube them, and they are going on, and I'm listening, because I may not always have that time. And that's something we continue to do. I mean, I think out of my 5 books, 4 of them have been written on the train on my commute, going from Milton Keynes to London, where I used to work, because I again set myself a target of 400 words a day, what I just said, and I had a tracker to check, how many I've done today. And then it doesn't matter, because then you're headed towards your goal. If the train is late, if there is, people are upset and everybody's around you and they're not so happy that the train is late and it's so busy, it's fine. You open your laptop, you sit on the floor if you need to. It doesn't matter, because you're in your book. So coming back to smart working does not mean not doing certain things. Students, especially when there's so much going on with you, okay, let someone else do it. If there are smart apps available, if there are podcasts available, and it's difficult for you to concentrate while reading, do it. If there are visuals, put it up around you. Put up visuals, charts, chemistry formulae, whatever it is around you. And this is where the subconscious mind comes in, because it goes inside your brain without you even knowing about it. Let me come back to Bollywood songs, right? It's not just Bollywood songs, but any songs. I mean, a lot of us know so many songs, and nobody's asked us to learn them by heart. We still know them. We still know them because we liked listening to them, and they just went inside. So that's something a lot of my students have done in the past, that whatever's taught in the class, end of the day, they record it, or they make videos of themselves, put them back, listen to it. And that's a very smart way of working, because next morning you realize, oh, actually I know this. Okay. And where, as I said, honesty, no option. Hard work, no option either. But just don't pretend to do hard work. And this is especially a lot of you who will get into the IT industry, or are going to get into the IT industry. Starting work at 6 p.m. is not an option. It's not a good idea at all. Do what you need to do Monday to Friday. Try to finish as much as possible. In fact, 70% of the time you should be working so smart and trying to do your day job in a very, very quick and efficient way, so you actually get time to learn even on the job.
That's, I think, really great. So I think smart work doesn't mean you hardly work.
Definitely not.
So that's the key. And work hard, play hard is the lesson. So here we have, just a minute now, let me take the next question. So how to sustain success in this the COVID era that we are there right now?
Yeah. So it's a very difficult time. And again, I would say that we are very fortunate that everybody on the call, and I would assume and hope and pray that all your loved ones are safe. And that is the first thing to be very, very thankful for, that we are there and we are healthy, we are safe. What's going to happen? Of course, everyone knows it's going to hit all industries in a very, very big way. And that was bound to happen. It is going to happen. And whatever the lockdowns have been, everybody knows they should not have been at the cost of somebody's life. So we need to respect the fact that what's happened has happened. Whether we should expect layoffs, of course, they're already happening. Whether we should expect salary cuts, of course, they're already happening. I get a lot of requests from students asking for internships, even now. And what I find very, very surprising is they say that, no, but I wanted the internship only in software development, or I wanted it only in data. I wanted it only in this. So I said, fine. First thing, there are no internships available anymore. Okay, just a few months ago, there were a lot of internships, a lot of jobs available, which are not available anymore. But if somebody is offering you a free internship, okay, when I say free, that you will not get paid for it, or at the most you might get conveyance or whatever else, grab it. This is the time to grab it. Because what students, a lot of them I can see here, are not going to be able to put on their CV is the fact that they did not work in the summer, or they did not work, they didn't really have a job, and there's going to be a gap. When I say gap, the gap could be not just after college, but even during your holidays. And this is that time to reach out to charities, reach out to organizations who are going out and doing a lot of good work across countries, and say, I'm equipped with, I have a fair bit of technology knowledge, or I have a fair bit of social media knowledge, or I have whatever else. Can I do something for you part-time? So a part-time, or just do it. I mean, just take on assignments and do them. Because the one thing it will give you, it will help you with your CV. First thing, it will help you with your CV. And second, even more important thing, when you actually get that job, and things will improve after a few months, everything will be okay. And when it's time for you to get your real job or whatever else, you would already have done something, and you would know better, and you would have already developed those skills and can put that experience to use when it starts. So that's the only advice we can give right now in the COVID situation.
Okay, and so this was, I think, a combined question. I think we did it. What does it mean to be successful? We have done it. So the next one is, I think, economy part also you covered. What is the booming sector for fresh engineers to focus on? I think this is a little bit digressing, but I think we can take it up. What is the booming sector for fresh engineers to focus on?
Right. So during my past 3 years in India, I must have met thousands of engineers, young engineering students. And it's very unfortunate, because when they started their engineering degree, they were told that this is the best career for you, and this is it, and your job is secure, and at the end of it, you're done. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And I'll also tell you this, that when we used to talk to employers, employers would actually tell us, don't send us engineers, don't send us MBAs. You can send us BComs, commerce students. Okay, and the reason for that, and it's very sad, and the reason for that is not because the engineering degree is not good, or the curriculum is not good, or that doesn't mean that at all, or not is the case with MBAs. But what it means is that there is a sentence, and if any of you have notepads and pens, I would really request you to write down the sentence, because a lot of students of mine have come back and told me that they remember this sentence, is that don't let your ego grow faster than your capability. Okay, so don't let your ego grow faster than your capability. And unfortunately, this is what the degrees have done. Because the fear of employers is that I hire an engineer or an MBA, and that person is just going to leave the job. First thing, they won't take the job. Because if it's not a job which they believe is up to their level, they will not take the job. And even if they do, they're going to drop out in 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, a month, or 2 months at the most, because they'll find some other job to do, and they will think this is below my dignity. So unfortunately, that is where we are, where engineers are concerned. Okay, and I've had this conversation individually with multiple engineers across countries and across cities, and only the engineers who are able to say, it's okay, my degree gave me something, but I'm okay with the fact that my job is going to teach me something. and I've seen them being phenomenally successful. So I've had engineers in my teams who've done recruitment. I have had people who've done project management, whatever else. Because engineering gives you a very, very strong grounding in logical thinking. It gives you solution orientation. It gives you a lot of knowledge. All you need to do is, keep your ego aside and use it. So coming to the industries and the sectors which are going to be hiring right now, we are saying that the hiring is right now, a lot of hiring is happening in logistics. Okay, when we say logistics, people delivering things, retailers who are now delivering things online, there is a lot of hiring happening with them. There is a lot of hiring happening in hardware and networking. Why? Because everybody who was working face to face is now working remotely. There's a lot of work to be done to put everybody in a remote way and make sure that the networks work. And this is across countries. This is not India or UK alone. This is across country job market, because that is where, and these people are working 24/7 to make sure that everything is up and running. Bandwidth. So hardware, networking, logistics are the areas. And the last area is pharma. Pharma companies, clinical, these are the ones who are hiring naturally right now, because there is a lot of intense work going on. Obviously, none of the students can overnight become doctors or nurses, so there's no sense in saying that we're going to do that. But what about the social sector? Because the social sector has no money today, but the social sector is still hiring because they continuously need volunteers. Right? And when I say volunteers, that doesn't mean you go out in the COVID situation and put yourself at risk and start working. But how about working at the back end? How about working on social media? How about working on databases? Can I do something about this? So these are the sectors which are going to be hiring in the long run. There will be more. Okay. And again, as I said, who am I to say what is going to happen after COVID? Because nobody knows. Right? Nobody thought COVID would happen. So nobody's going to know what next. But this is the logical thinking. So essentially, coming back to your question of what engineers should do, engineers, again, Python, R. If you're already an engineer, or if you're a mathematics student, also, you don't need to be an engineer. If you want to become a data scientist or a data engineer, a lot of times mathematical background, statistics is very, very useful. So use that as your base. Use maths and science and statistics as your base. Try and teach yourself or take on courses in R, the language R, take on courses in Python. Take on courses in data science and data engineering. Again, don't expect that, next morning after my data science course, I'm going to get a job and, I'm going to be this chief data officer somewhere. It doesn't happen like that. You will get a job, whatever job is available, take it. But at the same time, upskill yourself. And the other area, especially for engineers, and this is not just for engineers, but this is across, whatever your career is, what will never go out of fashion is project management. Okay, because why will project management not go out of fashion? Is the fact that everything you do needs to have an outcome, and everything you do needs to have a deadline, and everything you do has to have a timeline, right? And effort and cost and a budget. So this is also the right time to equip yourself with basics of project management. It doesn't need, you don't always have to have certification or whatever else, because what will come and go out of fashion is agile. Is the fact that, agile has come, agile is gone, agile has come back. Now that is safe. And as you can see, I've studied all of these. I've done agile safe, we've done DevOps, we've done all of this. So these are methodologies, these are techniques. They help you. Okay, if you learn them, it's excellent, because these will never go out of fashion, because this knowledge will not go out of fashion. So don't ever take on something because you think that's going to put it, you put it on your CV and magically you're going to get a job. No, what you need to do is put it in there, because combined with your engineering knowledge, it will help you in the long run. So this question was specifically for engineers, yes, but others, I would say even more open. Because the great news about the other degrees is that they don't think they know that much, right? Once they don't think they know that much, they're more willing to learn. Because the one skill which will never go out of fashion is the ability to learn, relearn, and reinvent yourself. Right? And that has not gone out of fashion at all across COVID or anything else.
Because learnability is very important, and that L differentiates it from earnability actually. And so now there's a question from, I think now we'll take live questions. So I can read out, it's from Tejasvi Joshi. And the question is, how to sustain and move ahead for success after so many failures, as failures may lead to negativity and fear of losing. So how to sustain it? Okay, great question, Tejasvi, because I think that was my first answer, that failure.
So absolutely great question, and I think this is very, very important. And it used to come to us a lot of times where people from colleges would say that, can you conduct lectures on stress management for our students? And I said, what's the stress? You know, they don't have a job, they don't have to look after their children, they don't have children to look after. Their parents seem to be doing a lot of things for them. So what is the stress? Oh no, they got rejected in interviews, so that's a lot of stress. So I'm not trying to undermine, or I'm not trying to say that, okay, this is a very small problem, but it comes back to the fact that, how are you taking failure? Are you taking failure as a personal affront? Oh, somebody up there was very unfair to me. Somebody was, was very, very good to other people, but I was the one who was the victim. And the minute you go into victim mode, you're going to go into self-pity, and you are never going to get out and say, life has been very unfair to me and all of that. I'm sorry. Every morning, whether you get the interview, get the job or not, you need to get up and first thank whatever you believe in for everything you have. Okay. And as I'm repeating, everybody on this call has a lot to be thankful for. So let's start with that. You start with being thankful, then everything else is just a stepping stone. So Tejasri, to take your question, every time you fail an interview, suppose it's an interview, or every time you suppose fail an exam, or fail to get the grades you wanted, or fail to get a job what you wanted, you're going closer to your dream, because it's just a more difficult path, and the more difficult the path, the better you're going to be at whatever you're going to be ultimately. So I know it's a bit philosophical, this answer, but that is the real answer. Because every time you go for an interview and you fail, you learn a lot more. You learn a lot more about life. You learn a lot more about how to conduct interviews. You also learn, and I would say, they say this very strongly, I've learned a lot from people who have not been good to me. Okay, so at the workplace, inside, outside, wherever else, when people are not good to you, they also teach you how not to behave. Right? So when somebody is not good to you, including my, you mentioned my book, Bosses of the Wild. The Bosses of the Wild came after 39 bosses. Okay, I'd had 39 bosses. And a lot of them have been excellent. They've been super bosses, super fantastic. And I've learned a lot from them. But some of them who are not good, they taught me how not to be a boss. What kind of boss not to be, what not to do. So it's the same thing with failure. So every time, it's like, and I'm going to give you a very, an analogy which somebody who worked with me many years ago, he gave this to me, and he was a boxer. On his weekends, he used to, I'm not into sport at all. So I don't have no idea what you do in boxing, but he told me this. He said, when you're boxing, once you punch someone, you anticipate the next punch. When the first one hits you, you need to breathe in, breathe out and say, okay, next one. Come on, I'm ready for the next one. And with every punch, you become stronger. So that's it. Every time you fail, you're just going to take one more punch and say, okay, this is going to strengthen me. This is going to make me better. This is going to make me what is called anti-fragile, right? Because every mistake is actually, you put that input, to use engineering terminology, you pick it up and you put it back into machine learning. If your body is the machine, you've taught the body, okay, next time this happens, I know how to do this. In this interview, I answered this question and I fumbled and I was not good, and I know that that's why I lost the job. But that's okay. Next time this question comes, I know what to do, because I won't make the same mistake. I'll make a new mistake now. So Tejasri, I hope it helps.
So now we have one more question coming live, and it is from Sandeep. He is a professional. So the question has can you lay importance of significance of connecting dots theory in defining success in personal or professional life?
Superb question, Sandeep. I don't know where you're working, but this is fantastic.
He's working with BSNL, and he himself is a very, I think, fine trainer. And he's very philosophical because he's a friend of mine as well and colleague as well.
Okay. So Sandeep, excellent question, because, we used to I've designed a lot of leadership training programs in my past life. And when we used to approach a company and saying, okay, what's going to happen at the end of this leadership training, a year long or 6 months, and every month we are going to do this, and what is going to be the outcome? So the first outcome we used to say is that a person will open their minds to their dreams. And students, you're in a great place because you still have dreams. But when we meet people in their 40s and sometimes, unfortunately, even in 30s and 50s, they say, oh, I don't have any more dreams. My child will now become a cricketer. My daughter will become this. My son will become that. And I have my EMIs, but I don't have any dreams anymore. So the first thing we used to do is that, to say that you live your dream. Okay, you open yourself to the fact that I also have a dream and I do want to still live that dream. The second is that you open yourself to what is called in the corporate world IJPs, right? What is it's an internal job posting. You say that for 3 years I've worked as an engineer in the hardware department, but now I want to try my hand at software testing, or I want to try my hand and be a finance assistant or do sales or whatever else. Okay, so that's the third. And the third and most important, and which is why I want to congratulate Sandeep for the question, is that we learn to connect the dots. Because no book, no theory, no training course is telling you how to connect the dots. Okay, there is no course in connecting the dots. But connecting the dots is the single thing which differentiates a manager from a leader. Okay, it's the single, I mean, there are more, but the most important is the ability to connect the dots. Are you able to apply what you learned? And I'll go back to engineers, because a lot of times you say, oh, actually I learned this in engineering, but where are you applying it? Okay, I'm giving you an example again of AI. Okay, so AI to EI, that I live in a place called Milton Keynes in the UK right now. And in Milton Keynes, those of who have joined from Milton Keynes, it's quite amazing to see those little pods which are moving. They're an invention of the retail industry. The pods are moving across the streets. They're delivering groceries. They're little machines, moving, and it's quite fascinating. It's quite entertaining also. And it's quite an amazing thing, because in the COVID world, nobody's touching anybody. They're just delivering the groceries at the doorstep and back. But few months ago, I was here in Milton Keynes, and we saw this pod was stuck in the middle of the road, in the middle of the main street, and it couldn't move. So we were in the car behind it, that pod wouldn't move, and it's a machine, right? So my husband said to me, there are 7 cameras in that. I said, great, but they're not working right now. Those 7 cameras are really not working because it's not going anywhere. So we had to reverse and we had to turn and go. In those few seconds, I clicked a picture of that pod, and we started using it in at AI to EI workshop. Because what does it mean? That pod is a machine. It's a super machine, because somebody has designed, this amazing thing of a machine picks up groceries from the store, goes to the right address, waits, opens itself, does things, whatever. But what happens when it doesn't work? Because somebody somewhere has not connected the dots. And that is the time for somebody, whoever is monitoring, to say, okay, 10 minutes have passed, 3 minutes have passed. This pod is not, it should have been here. It's still here. That means something's gone wrong. That means I can't just write a mail and report that, oh, that something went wrong. That is the time for me to wake up, connect the dots, maybe, mobilize the machinery to go and get that thing to work and stop the traffic that is resulted as a result of that thing coming. So ability to connect the dots really is the big picture. And students, especially now, when Tejasri, when you ask this question, let's think a little bit from the company's perspective, because the one thing I see lacking in job seekers is that they don't think from the company's perspective at all, because there are no dots to connect. Oh, it's my career, my CV, my dream, and company is being very mean and they have deferred my joining date now. It doesn't work like that. Right? So in order to connect the dots, think of the industry. What did I say? Which were the 4-5 sectors which are going to be doing well? And when I say those 4-5, that means a lot of other sectors are very, very badly hit. Look at travel industry, look at the hotel industry, look at so many industries, education, training, so many others, which are going to be very badly hit. So are you expecting then a company to design a project for you just for you to meet your dream? So the connection of the dots is that, and this is something, which I've learned the very hard way, because I've been part of 3 stories where people around me left and right were asked to leave, but I was not asked to leave. And I still thank, and this is one in Pune, one in London, one in, somewhere else in Delhi. I've seen people being asked to go. And why are people generally asked to go? I'm not casting aspersions and saying, oh, everybody like that is asked to go. But when you're saying that, no, I'm going to look at this from my perspective. I'm not going to do a job which is lower than what I believe is my ability. I'm not going to take on additional responsibility. I think somebody else should do this. Or I'm not going to take a salary cut, or I'm not going to, take on more people in my team. or I'm not going to work in this other way, or I'm not going to relocate, or I'm not going to work in another city or country, or I'm not going to do a lot of things which you didn't tell me to do in the beginning. Now why are you telling me? And this is what companies find extremely difficult to sustain. And who stays? The ones with flexibility. The one who say, fine, right now, this is the situation. This is what the industry is like. This is what the job is like. This is what the company needs me to do. And this is what needs to be done. And this is what needs to be done proactively. Okay, so I hope, Sandeep, I've been able to answer your question. If you have more, I'd be very happy to take it on.
Yeah, we'll take last two questions.
Sure.
And so we have that in my bucket. So first is coming from Satish Pandit, and he says, how do we consistent for our work in all bad situations?
Okay. So when you say, Satish, again, very good question, very close to Tejashri's. When you say consistent in your work, I think it comes from self-motivation. And that is something which is very rare to find. When I say self-motivation, it's one of the things where you say, okay, I want somebody else to motivate me. Okay, I want somebody else to say, okay, you did a good job. But if you actually move yourself up from sustenance to that zone of self-actualization, of Maslow, what we said in the beginning, you're working for yourself. You're working for you to feel good that you helped someone else or you made something happen. Okay, so Satish, I'm just going to take you very quickly through the rungs of leadership. This is something I have designed, where the bottommost rung, when you say rung, is the step. The bottommost rung of leadership is when somebody gives you a small job. Okay, can you Google this and send this to me? Can you make a list of this using this? Now that is transaction. At the bottommost, you say, am I able to do that? Well, did I do that successfully? Next rung is you get a group of people and get them to accomplish this bit. Can 10 people together make this database and send it? So again, that is transaction, but you're saying you're getting work done from other people. Next rung is you're asking these to work, but you also want them to work with you. And the last is inspirational leadership, when you are you. Now, what Satish is clearly referring to is the lowermost rung, where somebody is giving you a job to do and you have to do it. You have to get it done. In that sense, your greatest sense of achievement comes from the fact that you did a great job and you got more. But if you say that, I was waiting for somebody else to motivate me and give me more work to do, it's not going to happen. Okay.
And that's really good. So I think we have learned a lot of models today, which were a pretty new one as well. So now the last question, and so it's from Kajal. She had been HR in my organization for a long time, and that's really good that the person who has been with you and now with someone else, but again is with you. So, okay. So the question that she asked is that if you are in a job which according to others is itself an achievement to have that job, but you want to start something of your own, but you are caught in those day-to-day finances and all, so you are not able to do what you want, but according to others it's already an achievement.
Okay, so what is the question?
The question is how to get rid of this, because you are not happy. Success. Some people think that you become successful, but you are successful to be independent, but you are not able to come out of that job.
Right. So Kajal, again, excellent question. And there are a lot of students who want to be entrepreneurs, and I feel great when they want to be entrepreneurs. But I'll tell you a statistic. The statistic is that the highest success among entrepreneurs is for people who became entrepreneurs after 40, after the age of 40. Okay, so I'm not saying that younger people cannot be successful, nothing like that. It doesn't mean that. It just means that in your age group of 20 to 40, you have finished making all the mistakes which entrepreneurs generally make. And you made them at somebody else's expense by working with someone else and learning through that. So, so essentially, Kajal, if you want to do something on your own, you need to ask yourself as an entrepreneur, what is it? This is called the CEO circle. One more model for you. It's called the CEO circle, where as the CEO of your own dream, as the CEO of whatever you want to, be an entrepreneur about, have you done on the roles? Okay, have you understood finance? Have you understood sales? Have you understood marketing, HR, operations, legal aspects, contracts, whatever it is that needs doing? Have you learned enough about it? If you haven't learned enough about it, are you in a position to hire those kind of people? Okay, to make sure that they will do the right thing for you and give you the right advice. And of course, the skill and the experience. But if you got this in order, you're good to go. So this is something that you should keep in mind, and which is why, when people say, okay, as a CEO, what was the most difficult thing for you? I said, actually speaking, thankfully, the job was not difficult at all, because I'd been through the grind of going through all these functions, or knowing or learning enough about these before it happened. So so this is one aspect of your question. How can you be ready to be an entrepreneur? The second aspect, what others feel that you're already successful, is their problem, right? At the end of the day, it's your dream you want to live. How long are you going to, let others define that, oh, you can be only ambitious only this much? And I'll say this for a lot of women I can see here on the call, and a lot of men who will be related to those women. When I ask this question, is ambition good? On day one of a class of a leadership training, we ask, is ambition good? So I get the answer sometimes saying too much ambition is not good, especially for women, right? So who is the person who's going to define what is too much for you and not? So Kajal, you're going to define that. If you've already met somebody else's dream, it's fine, but your own dream might be quite different, and it's time to look at it after you look at the practicalities. So sustenance, if you've taken care of, it's time to fly.
Yeah. Okay, I think thanks a lot. It had been 1 hour, we didn't notice that. So it was really great to have you with us today for the session. And I think we learned a lot in these basics from you, Manjri. And I think the concepts will be with us. We will be uploading this on YouTube, and I will be sharing the link with all. So the last statement of summary from your side, and then I think thanks a lot to the wonderful participants. And I think we had a very disciplined audience who were already always chatting with me, sending the questions. And I think it was a smooth show. I think thanks to all of us. Thank you. Thanks a lot very much.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Mukesh, for organizing this, and great questions. Thank you very much. You can still send in and write to Mukesh, I guess, and send in more questions as we need them. The very last thing, and it stems from what Kajal said, Kajal's question of CEO of your own dream. Because people say that, oh, being a CEO, is that success? And again, if you notice in the past 1 hour, nowhere did I speak about any designation as success. So I'm talking about CEO of your own dream, wanting to achieve what you want to achieve, but at the same time having compassion. I'm repeating the word compassion, because if you have empathy for those around you, especially those closest to you, your family, people who have done a lot for you, if you're going to achieve whatever you're going to achieve at the risk or at sacrificing that aspect, it's not worth it. At the end of the day, it is for you to say that I led the kind of fulfilling life I wanted, but I also took everybody along with me. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Making others smile is the key, I think, and let's all live in a beautiful world. Thank you all for joining this very wonderful session. Calling it off. We'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Take care.